Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 867. I had the white pieces and started off with c4, the English opening. My opponent goes e6. One of the top three choices here looks to prepare an early d5. I go g3. You can play with knight to c3 as well, or you can transpose back into some kind of queen's pawn opening with d4. But g3 is another way to stay in the English. And he does go d5, and I just go bishop g2. You can ignore this threat to take the pawn because you can always check and take it back. So the two most popular moves here are knight f6 or d takes c4. And if you take, then the top choice really is just to give that check and round the pawn up. And if black plays knight f6, just normal development with knight f3. Well, once again, d4 would transpose back into some kind of queen's pawn opening. That would actually be a Catalan at this point. Or we could just continue like this. And once again, d4 would transpose into a Catalan, or white could castle and continue in English lines. Anyway, all reasonable ways to play. c6 is the third choice here. And then I took right away, which is a pretty rare move. I guess queen c2 is a top choice. Also just knight f3 developing. Both seem like pretty reasonable moves, but I was never sure. Well, queen c2 defends the pawn, so that's... but after knight f3, I'd have to worry about how to defend the pawn or whether I'm turning that into a sacrifice. Could be something like an open Catalan. After knight f3, he takes, going d5. Well, d4 is no good anymore because he can take en passant. Anyway, yeah, I'm not so sure how to play those lines. So I just took. And this is a pretty simple way to play, and we're just out of the opening book here. Oh yeah, he took with the e-pawn, which makes sense. And then I played b3. So d4 and knight f3 have been seen here before, but at this point we're out of the opening book. And the position is about even. The chess engine, I think, actually prefers black in this position because black has a little more space, but I don't think it's that big a deal. He goes knight f6. I go bishop b2. He goes bishop to c5, setting up threats along this diagonal, and I went e3. The chess engine says I shouldn't worry so much about the potential threats on the f2 pawn as I was in the game. I went e3 to prevent that. It says I could just play knight c4, and if he goes with, knight c3, and if he goes with knight g4, I can just shut down the bishop with this d4 move. It does change the nature of the position, but it's good for white because this bishop has to relocate, and this knight will also have to relocate. So white gains a few tempos there. So after knight c3, this knight g4 move is not really a threat and nothing I have to worry about. But e3 has some points. Wasn't the top choice of the engine, but it does prepare knight c3 in a way. It slows down this d4 advance, d5 to d4, although my opponent did play that immediately. So this maybe is a slight mistake. The chess engine switches its mind here and starts to like white. Let's see, after e3, maybe black should just castle and do normal developing moves, say knight e2, bishop f5. He's got a very active position and is doing pretty fine, I think, here. He's looking at some of the holes in my position. So this d4 move, maybe a little bit too aggressive, a little early for that without the pieces not being developed. My pieces are not developed either, so maybe he's hoping to strike. While I haven't castled yet, but he hasn't castled yet either, and he hasn't developed his queen side. So I respond in a good way here. I play knight f3. I was wondering if this d3 move was any good. The chess engine rates these as about equal, d takes or d3, and both good for white. So if he pushed on with d3, just play knight c3 and live with this pawn here. This pawn looks annoying, and maybe it is in certain lines, but because it does prevent you from putting pieces on those squares. But your pieces have found other squares. You can just castle here and play on and challenge black to try and find some way to exploit the position of that advanced pawn. Maybe after a while you can sort of organize your forces and put that pawn under fire with, say, castles, rook e1, bishop f1, and then maybe a knight coming around to attack it as well. I don't know. It would be a different kind of game. He just took, and probably I should take with the f-pawn rather than allowing the queen trade. The chess engine rates this as a stronger move. It thinks white's a little better in any case, but it likes f takes. Anyway, I took with the d-pawn, and he went for the queen trade. I wasn't sure he was going to go for this because I thought, well, this position is okay for white. In fact, white is still slightly better here. So not the most ambitious way for black to play. If black wants to play for a win, he should probably keep the material on. But anyway, maybe he enjoys playing with the minor pieces. They do get active here, bishop f5, but my pieces are active too. I go knight c3. I was wondering if he could get a pawn quickly, I mean a rook quickly to the d file, but it takes a couple moves to prepare that. He goes knight b d7, I go king e2. So it seems like these moves are all pretty logical. He does get a rook on the d file now, but my king is off to the side. I bring my rook over. He brings his rook to the center. Maybe there are some tactics in the long run along this e file here. So and I just continue developing. So we both have gotten our pieces out. Our kings are relatively safe. Maybe I need to step away here, but you know, I've got this square under control, so the bishop is not coming in to check my king, at least not right away. Right here, black plays a6, so I guess he was worried about my knight hopping in and annoying his king over here, his king side. Well, where his king is, it's actually the queen side. But I play knight a4, drive the bishop back. And I am looking at these dark squared weaknesses he's created around the king, but black should be okay. Let's see, I go bishop d4, he goes king b8, go ahead and trade off the dark squared bishop, hoping to accentuate those weaknesses. And he goes knight d4. Oh no, it's my turn here. I go knight d4. And he goes bishop g6. So bishop g6 allows a tactic. So if you want to take a moment here, see if you spot the idea. Okay, pause the video if you want time to think about it. I'm going to give the answer away here. You can sacrifice the bishop here on c6 because you get two pawns plus a rook here. So for your two pieces, that's a slight material edge for white, but I think more importantly the king is a bit exposed here, and these rooks are on open files. So this looks like a pretty good position for white. The chess engine rates it as winning, although it would take some work. You do have to figure out how you're going to convert this this position. But I think because of black's king being cut off and the rooks on open files, it looks like a pretty good position for white. So I should have gone for that. It wasn't just about the material, it was also about the position. Let's see, instead of bishop g6 here, chess engine is saying he should go with bishop e4, but this would lead to a pretty even position, and probably yeah, maybe white is still a little better with f3, kicking the knight back. So probably he was looking for something a little bit different that would you know, keep more interest in the game. But definitely this allows the tactic. But well, I blundered. I didn't take advantage of the tactic. I was thinking about this idea of pushing my center pawns forward, and I was just neglecting the possibilities on the queen side. Let's see. So I went f3 here, and he went knight b6. After f3, actually, he has some nice moves here. He could have tried this knight d5 move, ganging up on my e-pawn. I was planning to push it forward, but notice that it's not a threat because the e-pawn is pinned. I'm just pushing it there so that it's defended, and now he can counterattack it with the f-pawn. And, you know, it's kind of pointing out some of the weaknesses of my position here. My king in the center in this pin, so I can't easily, well, I can't take. There is this funny line the chess engine gives it, where I take with the knight, he takes back, and then the king steps aside. The idea being that you know, I've got a fork, so I get my piece back, but I will lose a pawn or two in the meantime. I guess just one pawn. If he takes, I'll take back, and it's defended by my bishop here. Anyway, not such a great position for me. Black is doing pretty well there. So knight b6 is not quite as strong. And so I keep some kind of edge here. He still has these weaknesses over on the queen side. I get an e4. So I am still thinking of this, this central plan. He goes c5, kicking my knight. Go knight back to c2. And then he goes a5. Actually, a5 is a funny move. It creates light squared weaknesses. And the chess engine thinks I should really jump in and exploit that. We'll see how later. Let's see here. Once again, knight d5 is a move. I can't take it. I can block like this with knight e3, threaten to take it. He can trade it off. And then once again, he can play f5. But in this case, I can trade rooks and take the pawn. I come out with some kind of slight edge, so I'm still doing okay here. But a5 gives me a pretty big edge if I play this correctly. So I think I start out all right, knight e3. He goes king b5. Go king f2. Getting off of that file, but it also opens up this diagonal. That's what I was not really exploiting here. Let's see, knight d7, and I went knight d5 here. So the idea that the chess engine has here is this one, which is pretty nice. I get this rook up on a square like this, and say he plays knight e5. You know, he's trying to reroute that route. I reroute that knight around. He puts my rook under fire, but I can throw in this bishop f1 check. Drive the king forward and play rook b6 check, and so this picks up a pawn for me, and it looks pretty strong. His pawn structure over here on the queen side is falling apart. So that's how I could exploit some of these weaknesses that he's created. Anyway, I didn't do that. I played knight d5. He went king to c6, and here I went rook e1. This is not approved by the chess engine at all. What I was thinking was I wanted to support this pawn so I could put this pawn forward. I was just still trying to go for that central strategy. Once again, the chess engine is pointing out I should try and exploit these light squared weaknesses around the black king. So bishop to f1, say b6, showing up the pawns over here, and knight to c3. And the knight and the bishop are now both looking at this b5 square. Yeah, it looks like a good position for white. So that's the way to play this. So rook e1, just not the best idea in this position. It turns out I never even get in that pawn push I was going for because, well, he starts to play actively here. He goes knight b6. Well, he's been playing actively all along. He continues to play actively. I take, he takes. And let's see, I bring my rook to the d file. He goes f5, and I exchange, and well, I do get in e5. That is true. I do get this pawn advance. I was thinking I was doing pretty good here actually during the game, but looking at it with the chess engine, it just seems like it's just an equal position, and black should be fine here. In fact, rook d2 check is the move the chess engine recommends, and then after I play here, it just wants to exchange and go for this endgame. I was thinking this endgame would favor me because I would have the better bishop, but black also has a majority over here on the queen side, so just pushing on the c4 and trying to mobilize that queen side majority is good. You know, I can shut out the bishop along this diagonal, but the bishop can drop back and get into the game along this diagonal. So black is not going to be suffering with a bad bishop forever. So a little bit of a, you know, it kind of looks bad at the moment, but it can very quickly be mobilized. So I don't have any permanent edge because of that. Anyway, he decided not to trade rooks. He dropped his rook back. I block out the bishop with f4. He went bishop to h5, kicking my rook. Went over here to c2. And then he went king b5, which is a huge blunder, and I hope everybody spotted this. You probably spotted this during the video as well. But of course, right here, I should have played bishop to f1 and just won that rook. You can't even defend it. So that's a terrible blunder. I noticed and moved a little too quickly. He left this pawn undefended, so I'm probably still winning here. Let's see, he played one more move and then he resigned. But it's not so easy for me to win from this position. I was a little overly concerned about this check here. The chess engine was saying I should just drop this bishop back here and allow that. But I was kind of curious what would happen if I had played the move I had planned, which was bishop back to g2. And, well, it's interesting. It's a bit of a Zugzwang for black. Notice that this pawn is under fire from my rook, and the king can't go to either of those squares. If it goes to this square, I have the pin again. If it goes to this square, well, it's just illegal because the bishop is covering it. So the king is kind of tied down. The rook, if the rook wants to maintain the idea of coming into f3 here, you know, coordinating with the bishop, then it has no moves. The other squares are covered, so that really can't move. So if he wants to kind of maintain this position, the only piece that's free to move is the bishop, and it doesn't have a whole lot of moves. So bishop d1 was a suggestion. I can move my rook aside. Say, just tries to sit on the position like this, keep me tied up. I give up the f3 square. This is what I eventually have to do. You know, he can play this check, not that one. He can play this check, and you know, I can just step aside, can defend the pawn this way. Let's see, I should have gone directly to g1 actually, but this is the line that I was looking at because I was kind of curious after king g2, but king g2 blocks in the bishop, so I could have gone to g1 directly. Let's see, say the rook comes back here to keep control of the d file, then bishop to f1 chases the rook away, and well, I can come down here and pin my bishop. Could also go to f3, but then I can take the d file. Let's see, king f2, I gradually unpin the bishop. Let's see, h6, he's kind of running out of moves. Bishop e2. It forces an exchange, and I get into a king and pawn endgame where I have this protected passed pawn over here, and he has weak pawns over here, so that's a win for white. So it does take some maneuvering for black to for white to convert this position into a win, but it should be winning for white. So anyway, he resigned and didn't care to battle it out. He was in time trouble too, so he probably didn't want to blunder again. Anyway, interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you again soon.